Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about monks and I will be giving you guys my top 5 tips for monk play for all players. Pro players are always abusing monks to their fullest potential, and it's actually a really important unit to get accustomed to if you want to climb the rank ladder. Beginner players though, and even like intermediate level players, are not using monks or are not using them to their full potential, not even close. It's one of the areas where I think beginners are lacking the most in at the moment from all the coaching that I've been doing, and I really want to get this video out there to give you guys a few tips to help your game and to incorporate monks into every single game you play. With all that said, let's hop into the top 5 list. Starting off at number 5, we've got a very generic tip. Always get a monastery at some point in early castle age. You can do it before adding a town center. You can add one town center, then a monastery, or you can even add 2 town centers and then add the monastery like 2 or 3 minutes later. Doesn't really matter when you get it, but as soon as you can afford a monastery, it's really good to get it. Monastery is basically the highest value building you can get in castle age. First of all, it is a building needed for imperial age, so you need either a monastery, university, or a siege workshop. You need 2 out of the 3 of those buildings, and so getting a monastery early sets you up nicely for an imperial age transition later in the game. Not only that though, but it also gets you access to monks, which are great for 3 different things. They're great for converting both offensively and defensively. They're also good for getting relics, which sets you up for late game and especially in the post-imp when gold starts running out, and it also gets you a nice little gold trickle throughout the game. And monks are also really useful for healing up your army. So healing, converting, and picking up relics are the 3 things you want to be really looking for when going for the monastery plan, and all 3 of those things are very solid, especially when you consider how cheap the monk is. Only 100 gold, which might sound like a lot, but it's really not that expensive since gold is usually quite plentiful in the early game and it's one of the fastest resources to gather. Also in castle age, we tend to float gold very often, and so you can either use the market to balance your economy, or you can just make a few monks from the monastery and get all that value. So as you can see, there's a ton of things we can do with a monk and a monastery, and so this is why I recommend every single game to get a monastery as soon as you can at some point in early castle. Moving on to number 4, now that we know we need a monastery, we need to get monks out of the field, let's talk about how we're actually going to use the monks. One thing that's really complicated for beginners is conversions and how to convert with multiple monks and not just one. So my recommendation is to start converting with all of your monks as soon as an enemy unit is in sight. It doesn't matter if this is the unit you want to convert or not. As soon as there's a unit of the enemy in sight, start converting with all your monks. Let's say I have 3 monks. You start converting with all 3, and then we're going to manually click one of the monks to convert another target. So let's say he charges in with 5 knights, you have 3 monks, you'll click all 3 monks, convert 1 knight, and then manually, right away, manually take one of the monks and convert another knight, and then take the 3rd monk and convert yet another knight. If you do that properly, you will get 3 conversions out of 3 every single time. The reason why you need to start converting with all 3 monks at the same time is because the conversion does not reset its timer as you pass from one unit to the next. Let's say for example you're doing it wrong and 5 knights are approaching, you've got 3 monks, you take 1 monk and you convert 1 unit, then you go for the second one and then you convert. Because you didn't start converting with all 3 of them, when you go for the second monk, your conversion timer will only start counting as soon as you click convert. Whereas if you start converting with all 3 right away, the conversion timer for all 3 conversions will start at the same time, and then you just quickly separate 1 monk to convert someone else, 3rd monk to convert yet another person, another knight, and all 3 of them have the same timer. This is how you can get really quick conversions all at the same time. This is a really complicated mechanic. I hope I've explained it well. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll definitely help you guys out to make it clear for everyone. In Imperial Age, you can get Theocracy, so you can start converting multiple monks on the same target, which is fine. But in early game, you don't have access to Theocracy. So if you use 10 monks to convert 1 unit, all 10 monks will lose their conversion juice or whatever it's called, and you'll only get stuck with 1 conversion instead of 10, or at least a multiple. This takes some practice, but it's definitely worth getting used to. This is the bread and butter of monk play. Moving on to tip number 3, we have a very practical tip for when your monk is doing nothing. So when you have your monks coming out of the monastery, it's very unlikely that right away your opponent will have units at your field. What you want to do if your monks are doing nothing or right away in early castle is look to pick up relics. And this might sound really obvious, but picking up relics nice and early gets you a nice gold trickle, which pays back really quickly considering the monk is only 100 gold. A relic will pay back 100 gold in no time. And if you pick up multiple relics at the same time with just 1 or 2 monks, you're going to get a lot of value from those those 2 monks. It also sets up your post-tip. If you're able to get 3 or more relics, you have more gold income than your opponent in the late game when the gold has, or when the natural gold has run out of the map. But this is a huge late game advantage, and we can start setting that up right away in early castle when our monks are just simply doing nothing. But here's the tip I'm going to mix in for a lot of people, and I'm sure so many people don't know this. On the standard Arabia in Age of Empires, you can load it up, ranked game versus AI. The script will always make it so that there's 2 relics on either side, or for example 1 relic in every corner, and always 1 relic in the center between both players. Sometimes, depending on the spawn, this ratio can look a little distorted, but it will always be spread out in this fashion. Imagine 1 relic in the center, and then its 4 corners from that center will always have a relic. There is some small variance, but that's how it works for the most part, which makes it really easy to get all 5 relics if your opponent is sleeping and not making monks. This is why Monastery from the start of Castle Age at point number 5 sets you up really nicely to go pick up the relics while the monks are doing nothing for the first 2-3 minutes, and then after you have all 5 relics, you now have a few monks, let's say 3, 4, maybe 5, which can really help you on defense and offense. And so you get the value back from the relics, set up late game, and still have those monks for the fights. It is so broken. Definitely remember this tip. All right, moving on to tip number 2, we've got monk healing and how to abuse it. Guys, real simple, monk healing is super broken. It basically gets you borderline infinite value. You're trading your time doing like nothing, just sitting at home, and you're basically getting free units, because let's be honest, in the early game, a unit at 1 HP is completely different than a unit at 100 HP. And so especially those mobile units like knights and light cav that can run in and out and sometimes take some damage but survive, you can send those units back in between raids and heal them up. This is an amazing way to play with cavalry, running in and out to raid your opponent, taking some good trades, and then running back when you're when your cavalry is low, heal them up with the monks in like 2-3 minutes, and then send them back in for another raid. Such amazing value. You can save your resources to make more units or click up to Imperial Age while still having maximum effect of the units that you have on the field. In a really practical sense as well, you can send your units back to heal, and because your monks are there next to them, if your opponent tries to engage the low HP units, you can simply convert the enemy army coming your way, and so you have free value to heal and you have defense with those monks. You see how monks get so much value? It's broken, I'm telling you. Before I show you guys number 1, I've got a quick honorable mention that I have to bring in the video even though I don't actually use it. So there's another way to micro monks. You could, in theory, control group each monk. So let's say you have 10 monks, you can control group them 1 to 10. And so when it comes down to your opponent entering the combat, you can then cycle between your control groups. So you just click 1, then right click your opponent army, keep your mouse near to the enemy units, then click 2, right click an enemy unit, 3, click enemy unit, 4, click enemy unit, 5, click enemy unit. And you can quickly get like really nice conversions with your monks, and you can target separate units, which is like the same idea as in tip number 4 with the manually clicking different targets. This control group micro for monks is really good, but the reason why I don't use it is because it messes up my other control groups, and I think the time you take to set up those control groups is way too valuable, and it's just not worth it for me. Like it takes like a minute to set up the control groups, and then I can't use other control groups when I have the monks set up on the control groups. So I've tried doing this and it's just not worth it in most cases. So it's worth mentioning it here just so you guys know about it at least, but I personally don't think it's a very practical way to go about it, so I ignore it. But yeah, do as you please. I recommend the earlier explanation I gave for converting multiple targets. All right, now at number 1, we've got the best use of monks by far, and that is defensive conversions. Defensive conversions is the play with monks. If you're dying to night raids, the Frank pickers at 1400, the Frank pickers at 1000 elo, the Frank pickers at 1800, the Frank pickers at 600. Let's be honest, cavalry play is dominating low elo Age of Empires 2, and it's dominating beginner play in Age of Empires 2 because night play is so easy, and it's basically the easiest unit to use and micro while doing economy at the same time. And so everyone goes for pikemen at lower level to counter the knights, but pikemen just isn't it. I can make a separate video on why pikemen don't counter knights in early Castle Age, but for the time being, just know that monks is your solution to night raids. All you have to do is keep the monks close to the TC, a tower or a castle, or even a fortified church, anywhere where a monk can garrison. And then if your opponent comes in with knights, you'll convert the enemy knights as they run towards you, and then it's obviously RNG. Like you might get the conversion, you might not. If the knight approaches your monk intending to kill the monk, at the last second, if you don't get the conversion, don't risk it. Don't let your monk die. Garrison your monk before it dies and keep it in your town center. Now your opponent with the knights will either tank your town center and die naturally, or he'll run away. If he runs away, take your monk out and convert him again, and the cycle will repeat. If you have a place where your monk can garrison, you can completely abuse them on defense and never die to knights again. This is why, if you look at monks holistically, we make in early Castle Age a monastery, then we make 2-3 monks to get the relics. 2-3 minutes later, after getting a few relics, we now have those monks on defense so we don't die to knight raids. Once we're safe from knight raids, we can push forward with those monks. If they survive to imp, we can get some important imp upgrades like block printing and have them control the area near the trebs. Look how beautiful and poetic Pro Age of Empires is, and how the monk gets value from the start of Castle Age all the way to Imperial Age. And then once you think you've forgotten about the monks, once they've left the field, then you realize the guy that got relics at 20 minutes in castle will now be winning the 2-hour game because he's got the relics in post-imp and the other guy does not. This is how monks dictate the entire game, and this is the topic that nobody talks about and nobody teaches on the internet. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. This is a really important video and I hope it's helpful. If you guys want more guides like this, I don't have that many on YouTube. I actually have plenty on YouTube, to be fair, for free, but if you want extra guides, check out my Patreon. I also have my strategy guide where I have 14 of the top build orders color-coded in a PDF document that I use myself in tournaments. I highly recommend you guys check that out on my Patreon as well if you're looking for that small edge on the rank ladder. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe to the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.